Ethan had always loved the quiet of his ranch. The wide open fields, the soft rustle of the wind through the tall grass, and the smell of earth and hay in the morning made him feel alive. His hands were rough from years of work, and his boots were worn from endless walks across the property, checking fences, feeding animals, and making sure every part of the ranch ran smoothly. He had grown up here, learning the rhythms of life from his father and grandfather, and now the ranch was all he had left of them. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky with soft oranges and pinks, when Ethan stepped out of the small cabin he called home. A mug of coffee in his hand, he inhaled the crisp morning air. The cattle were grazing peacefully in the distance, their gentle lowing mixing with the soft songs of birds hidden in the trees. It was a simple life, but it was his, and he would not trade it for anything. Ethan moved through the ranch with a quiet confidence. He checked the fences first, walking each line and inspecting for breaks or weak spots. He repaired a broken post with a practiced hand and tightened the wire just enough to keep it secure. Every task had a rhythm, every day a routine, and he found comfort in that predictability. There was a pride in taking care of the land, in knowing that his hands could shape the world around him in a meaningful way. As he worked, he noticed the distant rumble of a vehicle on the dirt road that led to his property. He frowned slightly. Visitors were rare. Most people from the nearby town didn't bother with the ranch unless they had business that required it. Curious, he wiped his hands on his jeans and walked toward the road. A dusty old pickup truck was coming down the path, slowing as it approached the ranch. Ethan squinted, trying to see who it could be. The truck stopped near the gate, and a young woman stepped out. She was not dressed like someone who belonged in the fields. Her clothes were neat and clean, her hair carefully combed. She looked nervous but determined as she held a notebook in her hands. Ethan's first instinct was to turn away, to retreat into his solitude. But something about her confidence, perhaps, or the curiosity in her eyes made him pause. "Hello," she called, her voice carrying across the open field. "I'm Clara. I'm a journalist, and I'm doing a story about life on ranches like yours. I hope I'm not intruding." Ethan hesitated. He had learned long ago to be cautious around strangers. Outsiders rarely understood the way of life here, and often they asked questions they didn't care to understand, or judgments they didn't want to hear. But something in her tone was different. It was respectful, curious, not intrusive or judgmental. "I'm Ethan," he said finally, his voice steady but reserved. "I'm the one who runs this ranch. You're welcome to look around, but I can't promise much. It's just life here. Nothing fancy." Clara smiled, a little relieved. "That's exactly what I want to see," she said. "Real life. Not what people imagine it to be." Over the next few hours, she followed Ethan across the ranch. She asked questions about the animals, about the land, and about the work that went into keeping everything running smoothly. Ethan answered carefully, choosing his words as he always did, not revealing too much but not shutting her out either. Clara had a way of listening that made him feel comfortable, as if she genuinely wanted to understand, not just to collect a story. As the day went on, Ethan found himself explaining things he had never thought to share. He showed her how he fed the calves, how he checked the water supply, and how he tracked the health of the cattle. Clara took notes, asked thoughtful questions, and occasionally paused to just watch, appreciating the quiet strength in Ethan's work. She wasn't judgmental, and she didn't rush him. She was patient, and Ethan realized he liked that about her. By late afternoon, the sun had begun to dip low in the sky, casting long shadows across the fields. Ethan and Clara sat on the edge of a haystack, drinking water and watching the cattle move slowly toward the barn for the night. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence was comfortable, filled only with the sounds of the ranch settling into evening. "You really love this place, don't you?" Clara asked softly, breaking the quiet. Ethan looked out over the fields, feeling the weight of his answer. "I do," he admitted. "It's all I've ever known. It's hard work, but it's honest work. And there's something about being out here, with the land and the animals, it just feels right." Clara nodded. understanding more in that simple answer than she could have in a long explanation. She had come seeking a story, but she found herself drawn into something deeper, a glimpse into a life built on dedication, resilience, and quiet strength. As the sky darkened and the first stars appeared, she realized she had been holding her breath, waiting for something to happen. And now she felt at peace. Ethan had not invited her into his life fully, but he had shared a part of it, and that was more than she had expected. Before leaving, Clara turned to Ethan. "Thank you," she said sincerely, "for letting me see this. For showing me what life is really like here. I know it's not easy to open up to strangers." Ethan nodded, a small smile touching his lips. "You're welcome," he said simply. "Just remember, this life isn't for everyone. It takes patience, hard work, and a lot of quiet moments. But if you can handle that, it can be a good life." She smiled back, sensing the depth behind his words. As she drove away, Ethan watched the truck disappear down the dirt road. Feeling a strange mix of curiosity and unease, there was something about her that lingered in his thoughts, a spark he hadn't felt in a long time. That night, as he sat in the cabin by the fire, he thought about the day. He had lived alone for so long that the idea of sharing his world with someone else seemed almost impossible, and yet, something about Clara's presence had touched him in a way he couldn't ignore. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of anticipation, a quiet hope that maybe, just maybe, life had more in store than the routines he had followed for so long. The ranch was quiet once more, the animals asleep, the wind whispering through the trees. Ethan poured himself another cup of coffee and sat in the warm glow of the cabin, thinking about what tomorrow might bring. Little did he know, Clara's visits were just the beginning, and the calm life he had always known was about to be changed forever. After her first visit to the ranch, Clara could not stop thinking about the quiet life she had glimpsed there. She had come expecting to write a simple story about ranch life, but instead, she found herself drawn to the rhythm of the land and the quiet strength of Ethan. The way he moved, the way he cared for his animals, and the way he spoke about his work all left a deep impression on her. She wanted to understand him, to know more about the man who had built his life around this land, and so she returned. Ethan, for his part, had not expected to see her again. Life on the ranch was steady and predictable, and the appearance of a journalist in his world had been unusual enough. But when he saw her truck on the dirt road once more, he felt a mix of curiosity and unease. He wondered why she had come back. Perhaps she had finished her story and wanted to check some details, or perhaps she was simply drawn to the quiet of the ranch, as he was. Either way, he felt a strange anticipation he hadn't felt in years. Clara spent the day shadowing Ethan, asking questions about the routines he had perfected over decades. She wanted to understand how he managed the ranch alone, how he balanced the care of the animals with the maintenance of the land, and how he stayed connected to the small community nearby. Ethan explained patiently, showing her the tools he used, the methods he followed, and the small tricks he had learned from his father and grandfather. "You've really made this your own," Clara said as they walked through a pasture filled with grazing cattle. "Even after all these years, you still find ways to improve things, to make the ranch better." Ethan nodded, brushing a hand through his hair. "It's not about making it perfect," he said. "It's about making it last. The land, the animals, they depend on me, and I depend on them in a way. There's a balance here, if you pay attention." Clara smiled, impressed by his insight. She had expected hard labor and quiet routines, but she hadn't expected the depth of connection Ethan had with the land and his animals. There was a tenderness to the way he spoke, a respect that went beyond mere work. She found herself looking at him differently, noticing small details, the way he paused to watch a calf, the careful way he handled the tools, the quiet patience in his voice. Over the next few weeks, Clara visited the ranch more frequently. She helped with chores when she could, carrying water buckets, feeding the smaller animals, and sometimes simply observing Ethan as he worked. Each visit, She noticed more about him: the subtle way he flinched when he thought something might be broken, the gentle way he coaxed the cattle into the barn, the small smiles he allowed himself when something went right. She also noticed how he rarely spoke about his personal life, keeping most of his thoughts and feelings to himself. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the hills, Clara and Ethan found themselves sitting near the barn, watching the sky change colors. The air was warm and still, filled with the sounds of the ranch settling for the night. Clara had been quiet for a while, taking in the beauty of the moment. When she finally spoke, "Ethan," she said softly, "I've been meaning to ask, why did you choose this life? Most people would never stay in one place like this forever. Why the ranch?" Ethan thought for a moment, watching the shadows stretch across the fields. "It's home," he said finally. "It's where I belong. Everything else, it doesn't make sense to me. Here, I know what needs to be done. I know my place. Out there, in the world, it's all chaos. Here, I can make sense of things." Clara nodded, sensing the truth in his words. There was a simplicity to his life, yes, but also a complexity. The routines, the responsibilities, the constant care. It was all part of a delicate balance that required knowledge, patience, and endurance. She could see why he loved it so much, but there was more to him than the work. Clara sensed a loneliness beneath the surface, a quiet ache that he kept hidden. She wondered about his past, about the experiences that had shaped him, and she felt a growing desire to understand him not just as a rancher, but as a man. It was during one of these visits that Clara finally let herself speak about something she had been holding in for years. They were walking along the edge of a creek that ran through the property, the water glinting in the fading sunlight. The moment felt private, safe, as if the world had shrunk to just the two of them. "I have to tell you something," Clara said, her voice trembling slightly. It's not easy for me to say. I've carried this for a long time, and I can't hold it in anymore." Ethan stopped walking, turning to face her. There was a tension in his stance, a careful wariness in his eyes. "What is it?" he asked, his voice calm but alert. Clara took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She spoke slowly, choosing her words with care. What she revealed was something personal, something that had shaped her life and influenced her choices. She had kept it hidden from most people, afraid of judgment or misunderstanding. But now, with Ethan, she felt the need to be honest, to share the truth, no matter the risk. Ethan listened silently, his expression unreadable. He did not interrupt, but his mind was racing. The revelation was unexpected, and it challenged everything he thought he knew about her and about himself. For a moment, he felt unsure, hesitant. Acting on this information could change everything. And yet, ignoring it felt impossible. The creek babbled gently beside them, the sound filling the space where words had paused. The light faded, leaving them in the soft glow of twilight. Ethan's hesitation was heavy, a tangible weight between them. But he also felt a strange pull, a desire to act, to respond in a way that felt right, even if it was risky. Clara watched him carefully, sensing the conflict in his eyes. She had expected a reaction, yes, but not this silence, this careful weighing of choices. She felt a flicker of hope mixed with fear. Would he understand? Would he react with kindness? Or would he retreat into the safety of his routine? For Ethan, the decision was difficult. He had spent so many years avoiding risks, keeping his life structured and predictable. But there was something about Clara's honesty, her courage in revealing her truth, that stirred something deep within him. It reminded him of the part of life he had long ignored, the part that was unpredictable, emotional, and full of possibility. Finally, he spoke. His voice was low, deliberate, and filled with an unexpected warmth. "Thank you for trusting me," he said. I don't know exactly what to say right now, but I want you to know that I hear you, and I appreciate your honesty. That takes a lot of courage." "One," Clara nodded, relief flooding her. I couldn't keep it inside anymore," she said softly. "I had to tell someone. And I trust you." They stood in silence for a while, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. The ranch around them seemed peaceful, the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant calls of animals filling the quiet. Both of them felt the weight of the moment, the unspoken understanding that something important had shifted between them. As Clara prepared to leave that evening, Ethan felt a strange mix of emotions. He was still cautious, still unsure of what the future held, but he also felt a spark of connection he hadn't experienced in years. The revelation she had shared with him had changed the air between them, making everything feel more immediate, more alive. Clara drove away slowly. Looking back at the ranch one last time, she felt a sense of anticipation, knowing that her visits had not only given her material for her story but had also begun something deeper, an unexpected bond that neither of them had anticipated. Ethan watched the taillights disappear down the dirt road, feeling the quiet of the ranch around him in a new way. The solitude he had always valued now felt different, touched by the presence of someone who had entered his world and seen it for what it truly was. For the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to wonder what might happen next, what choices he might make, and how the quiet life he had built might be touched by the unpredictable nature of human connection. And so, life on the ranch continued. The routines still familiar, but now layered with the tension of unspoken feelings and the promise of change. Both Ethan and Clara felt it, though neither could name it fully yet. There was something in the air, a possibility, a challenge, a beginning that would shape the days to come. And neither of them would ever be quite the same again. The days after Clara's confession were quiet, but for Ethan, nothing felt normal. He went about his routines, feeding the cattle, checking fences, and walking the land, but his mind kept returning to her words. There was a heaviness, a weight that he could not ignore. He had always believed that life was simple. Work hard, take care of the ranch, and avoid unnecessary complications. But Clara had brought complexity into his ordered world, a complication he could not simply push away. He found himself thinking about her more often than he cared to admit. Her presence lingered in the barn, in the fields, and even in the quiet of his cabin at night. He remembered the way she had spoken, the mixture of courage and vulnerability in her voice. It was rare to meet someone so honest, someone willing to reveal their true self without hesitation. Ethan had spent most of his life guarded, protecting himself from the unpredictability of others, and yet he could not ignore the pull he felt toward her. Clara continued to visit the ranch. Each time she arrived, Ethan felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. He tried to maintain his usual composure, but it was harder than he expected. Every smile she gave, every question she asked, reminded him of the secret she had shared. And every time he saw her hesitate, unsure of how to speak or act, he felt a strange sense of responsibility, a desire to protect her and to do right by her honesty. One afternoon, after helping him with the cattle, Clara suggested they take a walk along one of the trails leading through the hills surrounding the ranch. The sun was warm, the breeze gentle, and the world seemed calm and still. It was the perfect setting for a conversation that both of them had been avoiding for days. Ethan walked beside her in silence, his thoughts heavy. He knew that the moment to act, to make a choice, was approaching. Clara had trusted him with something deeply personal, and he could not ignore the significance of that trust. But he also knew that any decision he made could have consequences not just for their relationship, but for the life he had built for himself. Clara finally broke the silence. "Ethan, I don't want to make things complicated for you," she said gently. "I know your life is here, and I don't want to disrupt it. But I also can't pretend that what I told you doesn't matter. I need to know. What do you think? How do you feel?" Ethan stopped walking, taking a deep breath. He looked out over the hills, the golden light of the late afternoon casting long shadows across the fields. He felt a tension deep within him, a struggle between caution and desire, between the life he had always known and the possibility of something new. I don't know exactly what to feel," he admitted slowly. "I've spent my life keeping things simple, predictable. And now there's this. I've never felt anything quite like it before." Clara looked at him, her eyes searching his face. "You don't have to have all the answers right now," she said softly. "I just need to know that you're willing to try, to at least consider what could be." Ethan felt his heart pound in his chest. The idea of trying, of stepping outside his comfort zone, was both frightening and exhilarating. He had always avoided risks, believing that stability was the key to a good life. But here was a chance to embrace uncertainty, to act on feelings he had long suppressed. The pull toward Clara was undeniable. Stronger than anything he had experienced in years, he made a decision, a choice that surprised even himself. He reached out and took her hand gently, holding it with care and intention. "Clara," he said, his voice low and deliberate. "I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if this will work, or if it will change everything in ways I can't control. But I do know this. I don't want to ignore what's here. I don't want to turn away from it." Clara's eyes filled with relief and something deeper, hope, perhaps, or the recognition that they were both taking a leap of faith together. She squeezed his hand, a silent acknowledgement of the bond forming between them. For the first time, Ethan felt a sense of clarity. The hesitation, the fear, and the uncertainty were still there. But they were accompanied by a new feeling connection, and the possibility of shared life. The weeks that followed were filled with small, meaningful moments. Ethan and Clara worked together on the ranch. Their collaboration, natural and effortless. She learned the subtleties of caring for the animals, the timing of feeding, and the attention required to maintain the land. He taught her with patience, not condescension, and she absorbed his lessons with curiosity and respect. Each shared task deepened their understanding of one another, strengthening the bond that had begun with a confession. Yet, even as they grew closer, challenges emerged. The ranch demanded constant attention, and there were days when Ethan's patience wore thin. Clara, accustomed to city life and schedules, sometimes struggled with the physical demands of the work. There were moments of tension, when frustration and exhaustion threatened to overshadow the connection they were building. But each time, they found ways to communicate, to apologize, and to support one another. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, casting the ranch in golden light, they sat together on the porch of Ethan's cabin. The air was cool, and the sky was filled with stars. Clara leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder, and Ethan felt a peace he had not known in years. "You've changed things here," she said quietly. "Not just for me, but for you too. I can see it." Ethan smiled, a small, thoughtful smile. "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe I've just realized that life doesn't have to be all about work and routine. Maybe it's okay to take a chance, to let someone in." Clara nodded, sensing the honesty in his words. "It's more than okay," she said. "It's right. You deserve to feel this way, Ethan. You deserve to have someone who sees you for who you really are." For Ethan, the realization was profound. He had spent so long guarding his heart, believing that solitude was safety, that companionship was a risk. But now, he understood that true strength came not from isolation, but from openness. By choosing to trust Clara, he had allowed himself to embrace the unpredictable, emotional side of life he had long avoided. The unthinkable decision to step beyond his comfort zone and accept the possibility of love and connection was not without its fears. There were still moments of doubt, times when he wondered if he had acted too quickly, or if he was ready for the responsibilities that came with letting someone into his life. But those doubts were tempered by the certainty of what he felt in his heart, a bond forged through honesty, trust, and mutual respect. As the weeks turned into months, Ethan and Clara navigated their growing relationship with care. They shared stories of their pasts, dreams for the future, and quiet moments of laughter and joy. The ranch, once a place of routine and solitude, had become a space of collaboration and shared life. The animals, the land, and the routines remained, but now they were accompanied by the warmth of human connection, a reminder that life's most profound moments often came from unexpected places. Through it all, Ethan never forgot the moment when Clara had confessed her secret. The moment that had set this journey in motion. It was a moment of vulnerability, courage, and honesty that had changed everything. And by choosing to respond with openness and trust, he had discovered not just the possibility of love, but the strength within himself to embrace life in all its complexity. By the time winter approached, the ranch had taken on a new rhythm. Snow covered the fields in a soft blanket. The cattle were sheltered and cared for, and the cabin glowed with warmth in the cold evenings. Ethan and Clara spent hours together by the fire, sharing stories, planning for the future, and simply enjoying the presence of one another. The unthinkable decision, once a source of hesitation and fear, had become a source of joy and growth. Life was not perfect, there were still challenges, still moments of doubt, but it was richer, fuller, and more meaningful than Ethan had ever imagined. He had learned that sometimes, the greatest strength lay not in avoiding risk, but in embracing it, and in doing so, he had opened his heart to a new chapter, one filled with connection, trust, and the promise of shared life. Winter had fully settled over the ranch, covering the fields in a thick blanket of snow. The cold air bit at Ethan's cheeks as he moved about, checking fences and making sure the animals had enough food and water. The world outside seemed still and silent, but inside the cabin, warmth radiated not just from the fire, but from the life they were building together. Clara had become a part of the ranch in a way that felt natural. She moved with ease through the routines, helping where she could, learning the rhythms of the land, and sharing in both the work and the quiet moments of reflection. Ethan watched her one morning as she fed the calves, her movements careful and precise. He felt a quiet pride, not just in the work she was doing, but in the courage she had shown in joining his world. It had not been easy for her. The ranch was demanding, both physically and mentally, yet she had chosen to embrace it, and in doing so, she had become inseparable from the land and from him. They had settled into a rhythm, a balance between work and companionship. Mornings were spent tending to the animals, repairing fences, and preparing the land for the challenges of winter. Afternoons were filled with smaller chores, sometimes with moments of shared laughter, as they navigated the difficulties of heavy snow and frozen water troughs. And in the evenings, they would sit together by the fire, sharing stories and dreams, the quiet crackle of the flames, echoing the warmth between them. One evening, as they sat on the porch wrapped in blankets, Clara looked out over the snow-covered fields. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "Even in the cold, there's a kind of peace here. I think I understand now why you love this place so much." Ethan nodded, watching the animals in the distance, their breath forming clouds in the crisp air. "It's more than the land," he said. "It's the life it gives you, the lessons you learn, the way it makes you understand yourself. I never thought I could feel this, connected to someone again. But you've changed that, Clara. You've brought something here that I didn't know I was missing." Clara turned to him, her eyes reflecting the flickering firelight. "And you've given me a place I can belong," she said. "A life I didn't know I wanted, but now I can't imagine being without it. You've shown me the beauty in simplicity, the value in patience, and the strength in honesty. I'm grateful for every day here." The bond they shared grew stronger with each passing day. They began to make plans for the future, small at first, but meaningful. They discussed improvements to the ranch, ways to make the animals' lives better, and ways to sustain the land through the seasons. But they also talked about each other, the hopes they had, the fears they carried, and the moments that had brought them to this point. Ethan learned to open up more than he ever had before. He shared stories of his childhood, the lessons from his father and grandfather, and the loneliness he had felt after losing his wife. Clara listened, never judging, always supporting, and in turn, she shared her own experiences, her dreams, and her struggles. The walls Ethan had built around his heart slowly began to crumble, replaced by trust, understanding, and the warmth of shared life. The community around the ranch began to notice the change too. Neighbors who had once seen Ethan as a solitary figure now saw him with Clara, working together, supporting each other, and facing the challenges of ranch life as a team. There were whispers of curiosity and admiration, but Ethan no longer felt the need to hide. He had found someone who understood him, who respected the land and his life. And that was all that mattered. One particularly cold morning, a storm rolled in, blanketing the ranch in fresh snow. The wind howled through the trees, and the animals grew restless. Ethan and Clara worked side by side, making sure the cattle were safe and the fences held against the pressure of the storm. They laughed at the difficulty, finding joy even in the harsh conditions, knowing that together they could face anything. As the storm passed, the ranch lay silent and serene, the snow sparkling under the pale winter sun. Ethan and Clara stood on a hill overlooking the fields, feeling the peace that only came after a challenge had been met together. "We've made it through another one," Clara said, smiling. Ethan took her hand in his, feeling the warmth and strength in their connection. "Yes," he said, "and we'll face many more. But I know now, with you, I don't have to do it alone." The months passed, and life continued to flow between work, shared moments, and the quiet beauty of the land. Each day brought new challenges, but also new joys. The ranch remained a demanding place, requiring constant attention and care. But it was no longer a place of solitude for Ethan. Clara had become his partner, his friend, and his confidant. Together, they found meaning not just in the routines of ranch life, but in the deeper connection they shared. By spring, the snow had melted, and the fields came alive with fresh grass and the sounds of new life. The calves born over the winter were strong and healthy, the animals thrived, and the land seemed to hum with energy. Ethan and Clara worked together, tending to the new growth, repairing fences, and preparing for the year ahead. Their bond had deepened, strengthened, not just by shared labor, but by the trust and honesty that had brought them together. One evening, as the sun set over the hills, Ethan and Clara stood together on the porch, watching the sky turn shades of pink and gold. "I never imagined life could feel like this," Ethan said quietly. "Full, meaningful, and alive. You've given me more than I could have ever expected." Clara rested her head on his shoulder. "And you've given me a home, a place where I belong. Together, we've created something stronger than either of us could have built alone." The story of their journey was not one of perfection, but of growth, understanding, and the courage to embrace the unknown. Ethan had made the unthinkable decision to step beyond his comfort zone, to trust another person, and to allow himself to feel deeply, and it had changed his life in ways he could never have predicted. The ranch, once a place of routine and isolation, had become a symbol of partnership, resilience, and love. The animals, the land, and the seasons continued as they always had, but now they were accompanied by the warmth of shared life, the joy of companionship, and the hope of a future built together. Ethan and Clara's story was a reminder that life's most profound moments often come from taking risks, embracing vulnerability, and allowing oneself to trust. It was a story of courage, connection, and the quiet power of love to transform even the most solitary of lives. As they watched the sun dip below the horizon, casting long shadows over the ranch, Ethan felt a deep sense of contentment. The unthinkable decision he had made weeks ago had brought him here to a life filled with meaning, partnership, and hope. The quiet ranch, the snow-covered fields, and the animals he had always cared for were now shared with someone who understood, respected, and loved him. And in that moment, Ethan knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, he and Clara would face them together, building a life that was not only sustainable and strong, but rich with trust, joy, and the unshakable bond they had forged through honesty, courage, and the willingness to embrace the unexpected. Life on the ranch continued, full of hard work, laughter, and quiet reflection. But now it was different. It was fuller, warmer, and brighter. The love and trust they had discovered in each other had transformed not just their lives, but the very essence of the ranch itself. And as the stars appeared in the night sky, Ethan and Clara sat together, hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next, confident in the knowledge that together they could endure anything and everything.